and welcome to Don't Be a Doorstop. So the reason why I've called it Don't Be a Doorstop is, Tom and I basically, this is going to be a documented journey of planning a podcast, and that is the podcast. We're going to just plan what we're going to do. So both of us as kind of digital people, we also have some opinions that we want to share and get out because they're eating us inside, in the sense of we've started to craft some things that we've seen, and we want to share insights and input to other people's lives through the medium of podcast. And the reason why I called it Don't Be a Doorstop is because I've always thought of the analogy that, if you take a hammer, for example, a hammer will make a great doorstop, but that's not its ideal purpose. Its ideal purpose is to hammer nails. A doorstop, an actual doorstop, is the best type of doorstop. So sometimes in life, we find ourselves as hammers becoming doorstops, aka fitting into something and doing well with something, but it's not the fully fledged. It's not the fully fledged best or the most optimum setup from a purpose perspective. So for the time being, we're going to call it Don't Be a Doorstop, which hopefully is kind of funny as well. It's kind of in line with the kind of names that I like coming up with. I was telling Tom once that I wanted to come up with a coffee shop and call it Big Mug, because I think that's a funny name. And we would sell big mugs, or like you would have it in a big mug and we'd sell it big mugs. So you hit it here
just
first.
imagining someone carrying this two-hander mug down the street from the coffee shop.
Yeah, that's the best kind of branding, right? In the same way that Starbucks has its mugs and people buy its mugs. I mean, even now, we're not sponsored, but even like this Wales mug is a Starbucks mug. I'm like, if we could have some dragon on it with Wales and then say Big Mug, but sometimes I think people might be offended that it's called Big Mug because it's kind of laughing at yourself, but I think that's fine. If you laugh at yourself, I would be happy to have like this big mug thing because it would get people talking, right? So,
yeah. I feel like we might need to create a second podcast of Be a Doorstop for everyone that's found their purpose in being a doorstop for many people.
Yeah, it's
for anyone that's searching the word doorstop because they actually are one, we need to create a second podcast for all that sieving into that realm.
Yeah, this is for the people that are currently not where you really want to be. You listen to this one, but then for the people that are really where they want to be, you listen to the next one. But hopefully we can kind of blend in the new thing, and maybe season 1. It'd be great if we called season 1 is like Don't Be a Doorstop, and we talk about like how do you stop being a doorstop, and kind of talk about that. And then season 2 would be like how to be a great doorstop. The ultimate guide. This is like the SEO way, the ultimate guide to being a doorstop. That would be the funny thing, because again, it's kind of podcast culture. As and when we build, more than 2 followers, we then have this funny joke that, oh, did you listen to season 1 because they were talking about Don't Be a Doorstop, and we like reward people for listening because we talk about like little in jokes and stuff.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Building our bank of in jokes.
Oh, definitely. But what kind of questions can you ask yourself? Like, how do you figure out if you are a doorstop?
I think it's, I guess, what do you listen to? So some people listen to their mind, and some people listen to their gut, and some people listen to their heart. And I think a lot of the time, being a good doorstop is wholeness with all elements. And I think it is one of those things that you'll go through seasons that your mind might feel stressed or feel like it's not in the right place, or your gut might feel like there's an instinct of something, like you might be feeling like you're about to be made redundant in a job, so it's putting you on edge. And I think it is having that peace all around you that you have to seek out, because a new season might be you're in a new house, or you're in a new job, or you just got married, or you've just been divorced, or you've just had a kid, or you just lost a kid, would always trigger the, do you feel safe at home? Do you feel safe in your job? Right? Do you feel good at your job? Do you have that purpose in your workplace and in your hobbies, or do you just want it in your workplace and not your hobbies?
100%. And let's delve deeper. What does it mean to have peace? What does that actually mean? Like, explain it without using the word peace.
Being in the moment with joy and contentment, and being able to sleep well in the evening feeling like you've done enough in that day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the, I would say peace is the absence of, anxiety, or I wouldn't say discomfort, because I think there's nothing wrong with discomfort in the right kind of way, as in you should be sometimes pushing yourself to be uncomfortable, because that's where the biggest growth, like personal growth, will happen. So yeah, I would say it's the absence of like anxiety of that situation. So, for example, sometimes you'll feel that it feels right because you sense like no fears when you think about that thing, or less fear when you think about X over Y. And I think when it comes to, figuring out, are you currently the hammer that's doing the doorstop job? The best question I always find, and I've done it two ways. One question is, if everything paid the same, what would you do? And that is great if you're kind of a salary type person, or a very employee type person. But then if you're like more entrepreneurial, then another kind of phrasing of the question is, if all your financial burdens were taken care of, what would you do? So it's kind of like two ways of asking the same question, but it can be applied differently. Because, for example, if you were talking to someone more senior in a job already, then they're not necessarily thinking about, a job that paying is the same. They're thinking about, well, I want to think about it more because I'm doing multiple things anyway. I run multiple businesses, or whatever. But what would be your answer to those?
Well, I think to add to it, sometimes what I tell people, imagine if you'll have the same paid role as what you're doing now, but you could pick any role. Because I know that coming from a working class background, money can be very shiny, and it might feel like it's the best decision going for more money when it isn't always the best decision. Because when you end up in those jobs that you don't want, that you might be getting paid more, you end up spending more money to counteract the fact that you don't actually want to be there.
It's because it's those three things, right? You either want power, you want money, or you kind of want... Well, I guess it's like... Yeah, all of them. But it's kind of... I can't remember what the third one is, but it's kind of like freedom, right? Like, time, like power, like authority, like be over someone, or the money side. And you kind of need to work out what your trigger point is, because it might not be like the best reward for someone is like pay rises. It might be the best reward for someone is like extra days off, and figuring that thing out. But what would be your answer?
I don't know. I think just helping people. So it's sort of, it's finding out what vehicle in doing that. It could be a podcast like here. It could be just a social gathering. And then it just frees up my brain to do that more. But I sort of feel like, I think in my older years, not like I'm very old, but I'm still young. It's like, actually, I quite like limitation, because you learn to work through it or around it, depending on what it is. And then you have more to talk about. Because if, let's say, everything was paid for, I was a king or a prince or whatever, that wouldn't be able to help anyone, because I actually wouldn't have any advice for anyone, because I've born into royalty, I've got money, and I'll die into royalty. And I think it's very difficult to help people if you've not stepped foot, at least one toe into those areas, or 2 foot or 1 foot. And I think by going through a journey of getting a job, losing a job, getting a job, being made redundant, going in a job, don't liking it, going for another job, now liking it, actually it's more realistic with what 80% of people are going through. So then what you can do is share your advice with people.
I think that's why... So my answer would be to be a mentor, right? And the reason why I use mentor rather than a coach, and also I'd make sure that basically, if everything paid the same, what would I do? I'd be a mentor, but a mentor that doesn't require someone to pay for my mentorship. Because one is, sometimes as soon as money comes in, they actually have done studies. They did this test somewhere in the States, I think, where it's about giving blood. And they had 3 groups of people. All these people wanted to give blood, and what they did is split them into 3 groups. One group, they said, you can give blood with no problems, you won't get rewarded. Like, it's just doing it because you want to do it. The second group is like, you can give blood and we'll pay you for giving blood. And the third group is like, you can give blood, we'll pay you, or you can choose which charity you want the money to go to. And actually, out of all of the groups, and they started off, all of them wanted to give blood to begin with, and out of all of the groups, the group with no financial incentive, actually the conversion of that, more of them actually ended up giving blood, rather than the ones where you gave financial kind of incentive, or the kind of the financial incentive kind of / give to charity. I think it was something like 50% of people without the incentive carried on, but like 30% of the people like didn't carry on. 30% of people did carry on in the two other groups. So there is this idea of if there's something intrinsic or external kind of like motivator to things, like doing it because like doing good, as soon as you whack like being paid for it, it like demotivates you in a really strange way. But yeah, going back to the mentor coach, I would say coaches don't always have to have done that thing that you're kind of needing coaching in. And they give you more like mindset patterns and tools from like a mindset perspective to work things out for yourself. And I think a mentor is very much that they more typically have the experience, and then they can say, hey, you want to build a business? I've literally done that. So here's what I've done. Here's like route one. Save you going all around the houses, here, route one. Because I always think of this whole, you're climbing up this like rope ladder, right? And then once you've got to your bit, you throw the ladder back down. Like, as you said, coming from backgrounds where, things aren't handed to you, like as soon as I've learned something, I pass that on. And I think hopefully this podcast will become something that it's an outlet for us to just get better about sharing information, because, I don't want to hold it to ransom. And I never do it in the private conversation. So I want to turn it to a more public thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I've got a good example of that. I remember playing hockey over in Nottingham direction. So I was based in Nottingham and travelling over to Belper, so in Derbyshire. And I had the opportunity of getting paid to play. It wasn't that much. It wasn't like football. It was enough to basically cover my petrol. And I think I got my kit paid for or discounted. And it was fascinating, the motivation of training. I think matches didn't change because I loved matches, but training, if I wasn't getting paid for it, I would choose to go there. But when I was getting paid for it, I'm not choosing to go there. I'm obligated to go there. And because I'm obligated to go there, I instantly don't want to go there. And that's what I learned during my masters. It was talking about motivational theory, and it was saying money is the worst one. It's short term, probably the best one, but over a long period of time, it's the worst one, because once you've got all the money you need, then you're sorted. You don't need it anymore. Or once you've built a certain system that looks after you for the rest of your life, well, you won't probably want to be working in Tesco's to earn money because, well, you've got it.
Yeah, there was another, I'm not sure if it was a podcast or a book or something else. It was probably an Audible, because I always prefer that. Another kind of like example is when you think about kids doing chores. If you incentivize kids doing chores with money, then they just do it for the money, which is fine, but actually a better way to incentivize them is to actually do spontaneous, detailed encouragement. So then there's less of an expectation of, you always get paid when you do this thing, like taking out the trash or like taking out rubbish. Like if you knew, you always get paid when you do this stuff, in life you will expect to only get paid to do anything. So it's kind of like building in the wrong principle. Whereas if you build in the whole, hey, would you mind taking out the rubbish? And then someone takes out the rubbish, and then you kind of spontaneously compliment that child with something very detailed, not like, oh, thanks for doing that, but like, oh, thanks for doing that. The way that you like tied the knot, obviously you can't be patronizing, but like, I'm just saying it as an example, like, oh, the way you tied the knot was really interesting because I saw you did that the other week and it really helped with blah, 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 blah. Like something more personable to that particular child that's unique to them. And they were saying in this book was like, I think it was actually then converting that to employees and how to motivate employees. Really doing a whole, like, you do this job and you get bonuses is not the best type of approach. It's actually, obviously, of course, it depends on their circumstance completely because nobody's going to say no to a bonus. But it kind of like drove better results if you were like if someone presented, like if a group of designers presented a design to the CEO, and the CEO was like, yeah, that was really cool. I really like the use of your purple because actually you've been inspired by this thing over here, haven't you? And like that to the design team was like way more satisfaction in that particular instance rather than having a bonus for that moment. But of course, everybody is in different circumstances. So it was just trying to say like, overall, you will have better kind of feedback and you're promoting a better pattern if you spontaneously and kind of like intentionally compliment or encourage someone in a unique way to them or that group of people. And that's the best type of motivator for people. And I would say that's true. I would say that's true for me because I like words of affirmation, but I do see how that would be beneficial to a group of people, right? Nobody's going to say no for like a bunch of encouragement, right?
Well, it's interesting you say that.
Don't encourage me.
Yeah, I'm a bit different. I think for some reason, unless it's genuine, it feels genuine from me, I don't always receive it. What I'd more receive is, you've worked really hard this week, have the rest of the day off, or have Friday afternoon off, out of the blue that I didn't plan for, so I gain more time, probably because love language and quality time. So the fact that someone's gone, it's sort of them saying, I'll take your work off you so you could have the day off. So it's sort of the acts of service and the quality time that you got quality time with yourself or whatever you want to pick. But I do feel like money is useful. I've always found it when you're backed into a corner. When you don't have money, money's the best. Instantly you get your head above water of that financial pressure. You instantly go, actually, I prefer more time off so I can spend with my family or friends or going for a walk or meditate or whatever. Or actually, I'd really like a free gym membership so I can do exercise or that type of thing. I think it is that it's so hard just to get your head just that slightly above water. But I think when you do get your head above water, you can sometimes think clearly of like, is your job fruitful or how's your home life? Like, is it getting destroyed because actually you're hating your job and you're pushing it down, and then it's coming out on your girlfriend or partner or whatever? It is very fascinating because obviously if you're single living a life for just money, then fair enough, you probably don't see it bouncing off other people because you'd be going out clubbing or going out playing sports, you're going physically doing something. But I think when you've got that strong relationship with someone that you're, let's say, living with them or had a long relationship, you're less likely to, let's all go to the pub. It might be sitting at home making food for another or watching a film, where it's more likely to bubble away anything that you have pushed down because you're not having loudness trying to drown out the emotions of work that you're trying to suppress.
I think the key thing here is realizing that all this comes from like the two sides of like love languages and the importance of, even though it says the word love, like people think like, oh, that's only for romantic relationships. But actually love languages, I personally think like when we have kids, it'd be great to figure out their love languages really early on so you could just give them what they need to feel full. In the same way as an employee-employer dynamic, if you can figure out somebody's love language, you can then address that, or a colleague dynamic or a family dynamic. If you can figure out the love languages, then you just serve that person in the best way. Then the knock-on to that means that you're not necessarily in the surviving mode or the like surviving mode versus thrive, right? You can start to move over to the thriving mode, which then you can address all these like secondary, tertiary needs, because the primary need is need to pay bills. Literally, that is the thing. Like, I just need to pay bills, not get kicked out, and not be homeless. Like, that's the primary need for like security and shelter and food and all that stuff. As soon as that's like addressed with some stability, then you start to be like, okay, now that I have a house, like, what would I like to do rather than what do I need to do? And you can start shifting up the conversation, really.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think that's the thing is because the internet's around and all of us are learning more stuff. And I think we're sort of cross-contamination in the way that we think. Like before, you just live in an area, think in a certain way, maybe learn certain things, maybe support a certain team. But I think it's sort of making us catch supporting a team abroad or learning about some business abroad or in the next town along. And I think it is that fascinating thing that things like love languages or counselling or mental health is becoming a bigger deal, because we're realising actually people can earn loads of money, but then they're unhappy. So there must be something in between that gap of being super rich and looked after security and finances and genuine being sort of happy. And actually sometimes with people that hardly got anything are more happy. Well, how can you be the in-between? Is there somewhere that you could have both or know what you prefer over the other thing?
I think the baseline is always, like, I thought that life is 80% mindset, but actually I think life is 100% mindset. And out of mindset, and by mindset I mean like thinking and thoughts, like positive thoughts, or like, you know, that it's not scare, like the provision is not scarcity, like there's not few options, that there's many options. You know, we always think, and again, this podcast is probably going to be a bunch of like psychology, like Myers-Briggs stuff, right? You need to kind of convert yourself from thinking, oh, there's only 10 options, to be like, no, there are thousands of options, and it's just down to mindset. And kind of like the vision of that and the big picture thinking of that is helpful. So then you can find solutions to the struggles or the problems that we have, rather than think, oh no, there's only a few options. There's only, you know, well, there's already coffee shops, so me building another coffee shop doesn't make sense. You know, like, well, actually, if you take, you know, no one's recreating cupcakes. They're just creating a different, like, grouping, right? They're just adding let's add orange, or let's add mint. Like, they're just iterating on it rather than inventing, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I think a lot of stuff is mindset. And I think the baseline for mindset, the starting point, is thankfulness. I'm trying to be more thankful. So Kimmer and I have got this whiteboard where we write our wins on it. And by wins, I mean like something good that happens.
So the people that are following this podcast may not know who Kimmer is.
So Kim is my wife. She's also an amazing music artist. And at some point, I'll have to, you know, get her to give us a theme song of "Don't Be a Doorstop" theme song. But she probably her rates are probably too high for coming to do this low budget podcast, because I can't even, you know, pay for the label to be removed.
Give a tweet long of how long have you been married? Where did you meet?
Oh yeah, this is like
interested in our lives.
You know, this what will happen is like someone will start the podcast and be like, "Why should I listen to these guys?" And then we'll do this talk, and then we'll be like, "And this is why you should listen to us. Like, this is our background. This is why you should come back for episode 2." But yeah, my elevator pitch is, I basically am my background is I've come a drummer and a designer. So, you know, designer by day, drummer by night, and we've met in London. Kim was lawyer by day, musician by night, or artist by night, music artist by night. We've been married 5 years, and she has gone from corporate law, which is where lawyers buy and sell or like merge. When companies buy other companies, she would work on deals like that in the corporate law department. And she basically had gone through the process of, this is great, but the real thing inside of me that I've always wanted to do is become a music artist. So she's now a fully fledged music artist. And what's cool is, because I know a bit of music, I can like feed in a little bit to that and kind of be the official manager of some sorts on some stuff. But yeah, so she's a music artist. And then
So how do you find her?
I found her in church. So
her songs.
Oh, right.
Plug it.
Yeah, if you type in Kimmer, Kima, Otung, Otung, into Spotify, you'll be able to find it that way. Yeah, like I'm like where do I point? The
future developer that comes back.
Yeah, where do I point for this thing? Or if I hold my hand like this. Yeah, so if you go to Spotify and search Kimmer Otung, you'll be able to find her music. And I think for me, my background is, this is not an elevator pitch. The elevator's already hit the ground floor. I'm just still hanging on. I pressed the emergency button, so it stops halfway. And for me, I've basically done web design at university. I then went in to do 2 years at a charity doing web and print, and then moved into a digital agency, and then felt, why build someone else's dream when you can build your own? So then started an agency of my own, doing lots of design work, or product design as they call it, or UX work, and also web development. And now we have clients such as Google, Ford, GSK, all the way to startups. So yeah, which is cool. And this is an external arm. So what I really like doing is the agency is to fund the good work. So we have something called the Ryland Consulting Prize up in Nottingham-Trent, which is basically awarding £1,000 to three. Actually, now it's £2,000 to 6 students in the first year that have completed the first year that have been the best progressed, or the people that have like done the best in the year. So that's a really, really cool thing. I've been doing that for 4 years now. It's like a 10-year commitment. So yeah, the agency funds the good work, and at some point I'd like to build a school, but that will come with time.
So if you're interested,
that's my long elevator pitch.
Comment.
Yeah, if you want to also build a school, then comment. And if you're interested in building a school, you should watch the documentary called Daughters of Destiny, which I think is on Netflix or Amazon. But you should watch that. That's a really interesting story, and we'll go into that later. What's your long 100-floor elevator pitch? Oh, you've muted yourself. You've tapped the mute on the microphone. There you go.
I was just saying you need to explain Kim and the background a bit before going into what you're about to go into, but I've already forgotten what you were going to talk about now.
Right. I don't remember either. We'll comment down below to remind us next week. What did we forget in our podcast?
Or in 5 years' time.
Yeah, like when you watch this in 10 years' time, tweet us to be like, hey, you forgot to mention this in your chat in your first episode that you put together.
Yeah.
So what's your elevator pitch? Not elevator pitch, but
I would prefer to hold off that information.
Come for round 2. Yeah, come for episode 2 to figure out who this person is. You know his name's Tom.
We're just showing off the ankles at the moment. We can't go up to the knees just yet.
So this is ankle talk. You know what will happen? Yeah. So as you may know...
What I was thinking as well, when you were saying, we work with Google and Ford, I feel like we need like some bootleg companies, like Google or something that sounds very similar, but it's completely different. Maybe we need to build other businesses that sound like businesses and hope we don't get...
Yeah, just one spelling mistake. I mean, I think they always...
Yeah, the dyslexic version of all of them.
they always say that Google, like some people type in 3 O's or whatever, and they've bought those domains, so then they can actually get to... Google, like the misspelling of Google is bought by someone like, hey, it looks like you wanted to go to Google, and that is the web page, which is a funny thing as well. But so stay tuned for episode 2, if and when that happens. No, more so when it happens.
If and when.
But until
it's
then,
all about mindset. Don't quit. But if it when happens, see you soon.
Yeah, we should also talk about grit as well, which is another factor. So this podcast is going to be literally with no order or anything. Over time, hopefully we'll add this order in and make it a little bit more streamlined. But yeah, if you have any particular takes or particular topics that you'd like us to speak about, as you know, we've already talking a lot about, purpose, psychology, love languages and stuff. So, and making money and jobs and all that stuff. So hopefully it'll get better over time. So what's our tagline going to be? Stay classy, San Diego. No, maybe our tagline should be don't be a doorstop. But then I'm worried that the hammer part is the integral part to the don't be a doorstop bit. Hey, hammer
time.
Oh yeah, hammer time.
Hammer time.
Hammer
so it's
time.
time for hammer.